Okay. 2 weeks is Chanukah, Mizra Hashem. And basically, Chanukah, unlike Purim, now Purim has a big hachana to it, big preparation because of the drinking. Everybody gets excited, from the beginning. And the Suda, it's a Suda that's kavua, and where you're going to go makes a big difference, especially as a bocher. And families, plan these things for at least a good 15 minutes in advance of the Suda, if not longer. And basically it's got the atmosphere, there's a whole Masechta, there's a whole tractate, there's a whole Gemara, through and on, daf long basically, that you can learn and that prepares you. A story, there's a Megillah, right? Chanukah is kind of like, it's just there. You have halachas of halakas neros, which you have to do and know how to do properly. And that's about it, by the Shemazayas, with the menorah, maybe have a Masibah or 2 or 3 or 6 or something like that. You can also add drinking to them, because basically, if you have a Suda and you do the Torah and you sing Shiras, Baruch Hu, you can also turn to a Sudas Mitzvah as well, and Sudas Mitzvah requires wine and things like that, just to make it a little bit more exciting and gets people prepared. But there's not a lot of hachana that we do in advance of Chanukah, which is a shame, because Chanukah really holds the key not just to the gula itself, but basically or at least not just the national gula, but also to personal gula as well. I asked you, who here believes in miracles? Good.
Anyone not?
That's the Jewish people, right? Our whole existence from the beginning until this very point has been completely Lamal Mateva. This is one of my favorite one of all that you're actually participating in, which you don't even understand and appreciate because we don't focus on this. Just one day I woke up and realized this is a fantastic miracle. But you realize that you're living here, for the time being at least, right? You're here in a yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael, surrounded by at least, last count, maybe more now, because they have children one every, 0.06 seconds, they're up, boom, 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 boom the entire time. 360 million people who do nothing but plan to wipe you off the face of the earth. I don't want to scare you away, right? Don't leave yeshiva tomorrow. But that's what's around you. And the only friendly neighbor we have, which is not so friendly, basically is the Mediterranean Sea. Because it's not planning against you, but it's not the safest place to go either. And your parents have allowed you to come here, maybe even sent you here, right? It makes you wonder a little bit. But, here you are in the lion's den, literally. Do you understand that? You appreciate it? You talk about that? You realize that you should go to bed at night time thinking to yourself, this is a phenomenal nace. It's not because of nuclear bombs, because they have so many Arabs, and they don't care about them that much. They sacrifice them left, right, and center all the time. If they came running at us with bayonets, just bayonets, those long knives, like World War I type of a thing, basically, we couldn't nuke them fast enough. It's just like take 6 minutes or 8 minutes basically to fly north to south in an F-16 or something like that. Tanks would come across parts of Eretz Yisrael in 2.5 seconds, and here we are. We're sitting here having a shir, right? You'll have supper soon, okay, for better or for worse, right? And we make Shabbos, and it's incredibly peaceful. Ki'ilu, we're someplace else in the world. And and appreciate that. And that's just a chilk, and it's getting more so. You're going to witness the most fantastic things coming up soon. Because you can see how Eretz Yisrael, the Jewish people, are becoming increasingly more isolated by the day. Right? But the friends we once had, even the friends we called friends, are not such friends anymore. And we're becoming more isolated. That's what U.S. Secretary of Defense Panetta basically pointed out, that if we don't get back to the bargaining table, we're becoming more isolated. We're being cut off. The world never included us in the first place, really, to be quite honest, right? And we're more isolated by the moment, and you know what's going to happen. You know where it's going, right? Who doesn't know where the world's going? Is it going to get better before it gets worse? We can pretend that we want, but kinireh, not necessarily. So what's going to happen? Well, just open the book, look what happened Chanukah time. You had a phenomenal situation. If it was a numbers game, we should have lost the war hands down. We should never have gone to battle. We should have run away to another country. We should have fled for our lives. They were militarily stronger than us by 1,000,000 miles. They had the most technologically advanced equipment you can possibly imagine. They had state-of-the-art elephants, right? They had state-of-the-art spears, right? What do we have? Bows and arrows. So David HaMelech, what does he say? Right? Not there, but earlier, right? The entire Israeli army at that time is completely incapacitated. Why? Because Galius is not a coincidence. His name is Galius because Galius, Galius, the whole idea. Galius has challenged the Jewish people, the Palestinians of that time, right? They've challenged the Jewish people, and the entire Jewish army is shaking its boots. One big, huge jump. What do you care? Just shoot a bunch of arrows at the guy. What do you stand to lose, right? And they're entirely incapacitated. And David HaMelech says, I'll do it. I'll go. I'll face this guy. Who are you? What are you going to do? Right? How are you going to win? How could you possibly make a dent in the situation? Because I'll go, right? Well, take the armor at least. No, I don't need the armor. Okay? You don't need the armor? What are you talking about? This guy is like a powerful monster and mean and cruel. You don't stand a chance. At least put something on to protect yourself. Don't need it. And he goes out there with his slingshot, right? Made in Palestine. Goes with his slingshot, right? Made in Eretz Israel by the Jewish people. They stole from us. We didn't take it from them, right? He goes out there and he stands before Goliath and he makes the most remarkable statement. He says, I'm not coming to you with javelins and spears and F-16s and F-22s, and nuclear bombs. I'm not coming to you with things like that. Forget about all that stuff. You guys may have it. It's not my job. It's not my deal. I'm not going to do that, right? Instead, I am coming to you in the name of God. Huh? Yeah, in the name of God. What? Who? In the name of God. God of the Jewish people. That's a good one, right? This should take a few seconds, right? Then we'll roast you and eat you for supper tonight, So David says, don't go anywhere. He winds up, he gets the things going, I tried one of these things once. I actually hit myself in the back of the leg. But he's an expert. It's like going and going and going, basically. And he takes one shot with a stone. And Goliath is wearing this helmet, which has a little crack inside here. It's like, for decoration, because it's too narrow. Who can hit that spot? Come on. Even the best, with a machine gun maybe, it's a different story. But with a spear, with bow and arrow, the chances are very slim. And he's got a little slit, in his helmet over here. And David HaMelech, he wings this thing. He lets it go. He fires, right? And the stone hits him exactly in that spot. The guy, big thud, right? A big thud. And he cuts his head off and said, here's the trophy. And they all run away. And the Jewish people are like, who is this guy? And where did he come from? And how did he do that? Well, he came in the name of God. Aside from all that stuff. So, you guys all believe in miracles, but do you believe in miracles that can happen to you? Have miracles happened to you? All the time, every day, right?
Yeah.
You just stop and you can count them. You don't always pay attention to them, but you think about it. It's incredible. Just going to the bathroom is a miracle. That's why there's brucha. It's just a person gets sick, God forbid, and they realize how miraculous the entire bodily system is. How many things have to happen to function properly inside the body. That's just the body itself, and all day life, and other things that happen. And life can be tough. There's no question about that. But the fact that life is tough doesn't mean miracles still happen. Miracles happen in the Holocaust too, all the time. Sometimes not for the best, at least not in the most happy circumstances, but even Yeshua's took place in the most remarkable way sometimes. Kosh Baruch Hu is always performing nisim neflos, right? But the difference is we can't really control them. I was once talking to somebody, and he was bemoaning the fact he didn't know how he was going to pay his Makola bill next month, the month coming up. But he was a little concerned, a little worried about this because, you got to pay the Makola bill, one more food next month, and he was starting to panic a bit. So, his friend said, actually, that was the friend. I said to him, well, how'd you pay last month? He said, that was a nace. That was a phenomenal miracle. My parents sent us a check. We weren't expecting it. It helped at the last second. It helped us out. What about the month before that? That was also a miracle, right? That was this thing, what about the month? You go back 15 years. And every month was a miracle. So I said to him, I understand. You're telling me and you're admitting that every month until now has been a nace, one way or another way, that you've been able to survive. He's working kollel. He's not making a lot of money. His wife, is working but not making tons. They've got kids, he don't always make ends meet. And you're telling me that you've been able to do it somehow? Yeah, there's been stress and schwitz a little bit here and there, but somehow you did it over. Okay, so 1 month you missed, but another month you made up. And I was like, and you made Pesach, right? And you made Sukkot and Rosh Hashanah and Kippur and all these, and you still got through it? Yeah, unbelievable nisim v'neflayos. So I said, what are you worried about? If for 15 years God's been doing it for you, so what are you worried about? So he said, but how do I know this is not the last month? Right? How do I know? God's not going to say, Atkan, right? I've been carrying you now for 15 years. Next month you're on your own. How do I know it's not going to happen? Well, that's where bitachon comes in. Emunah and bitachon are two different things, right? We use them kind of interchangeably, but they're two different things. The word emunah comes from the word uman, which is like a professional, right? Emunah goes on the past, meaning that, I take my dry cleaning to the same place for year after year, and I drop the stuff off and I pick it up. Why? Because this guy has proven to me he can do without burning my shirts. And the guy ruins my shirts 1, 2, 3 times, that's the end of him. He has disproved himself. But if a person proves himself reliable, right, because he's an expert, he's an uman, he's a craftsman, so therefore I believe in him because of what he's done in the past. So Kodesh Baruch Hu said, Taha Reis Ladas, I took you out to show you. You've seen the miracles. You witnessed the Geula. You see what I've done for you. It's all in the past. Now, what are you supposed to do with it? Bitachon. What's bitachon? Bitachon is projecting the emunah of the past into the future. If God has carried you for 15 years, give him a break. Rely upon him another month and another month. Okay, make your shtada loose, right? You got to do your job, do your part. But, knowing that somehow where you fall short after making that effort, God's going to help you out. Just like he's carried you the entire, one way or another way, he's going to carry you through. And that's what Chanukah is basically telling us. That's what it's all about. Chanukah, if it was a numbers game, we would have lost the battle. If we fought the war according to Asa's world, the way he does things basically, we would have lost the battle. We shouldn't have gone in the first place. We should have just basically walked away and forgot about it because there was no way in the world you could possibly win, but we won anyway. And the miracle continued because we found one jar of olive oil, which is also a miracle, right? But to find one jar, it's possible to seal the Kohen Gadol, it's still tahor, it's possible. But that one jar of oil, which is only 1 day's worth, should burn for 7 extra days, the entire time it takes to make new oil, that's tahor, because they could have lit impure oil, right? They could have, in the meantime, because it was onus. What do you do? What do you do? But they didn't have to do that. Because of course, Baruch Hu allowed the oil to burn the entire time through, until the 8th day, when they finally had enough, new Shemen Zayis to put in the menorah and continue the mitzvah of Lachos menorah, right? Near Tamid the entire time. So it's the same thing. A numbers game doesn't work. This is 1 day's worth of oil. They burned for 8 days. That's the Jewish people. That wasn't simply a singular event. Like we look at Chanukah like, Nes Gadol Hayasham. It happened back then at a certain time. No, you don't understand. The Nisim happened every single day. It's like somebody, for example, who makes your breakfast every single day. Let's say. I don't know if it happens here, right? But makes it every single day. It doesn't happen when you get married too, for that matter. You just, but that's how you do it for someone. You make breakfast for someone every single day, and the person doesn't notice. They come down, they sit down at the table, it's all set, the food's there, they eat, and they walk out. You ever know A.B. Rottenberg?
Yeah.
He wrote a song about, the one with the Rebbe, the guy, the Shamers and all of that. So every single day, the food's there. And one day, right, the person comes out and says, for breakfast, I have made you scrambled eggs with toast and butter and, and fruit and the whole thing. And the guy goes, thank you very much. But, manishna aboker hazeh. It's like, why all of a sudden you're telling me that? Because every single day you sat down, you did your bruchas, you ate, you went away, you barely said thank you. So this morning I focused you on the fact that what I've been doing every single day. Chanukah, here's the chiddush. Chanukah was not Nes Gadol Hayasham only. Chanukah was coming to tell you, look what I do for you every day. If you'd only pay attention and get into it and hook into it and be part of that, then you could control miracles too. That's the difference. See, that's the difference my friend was telling me. I can't argue about the miracles of the past. I can't. They happen. I'd be a kofar. And kafui tova, to go back and say, that wasn't such a big miracle, the way that check sort of fell from the sky, an airplane was passing over, and somehow fell, it was a miracle. It's nice. My parents helping me out. Okay, but dafka when I needed the money, just exactly that way. So Kodesh Baruch Hu's ways of showing us that he's doing miracles for us all the time. Just that we're not focused, we're not paying attention. Chanukah says, pay attention. Focus. See it. Because when you do, and here's the difference, you can control it yourself as well. It's a big step. I'm not saying you to sit there and wiggle your nose or something and also make food appear, although that is possible. Tanoim didn't wiggle their nose, but they're able to use Kabbalah to do miracles like that. It's possible with Kabbalah to do miracles on demand. We're not quite holding it with Kabbalah's Maisius yet. Maybe next week, but not right now. Right? It's a different thing. But to the point that you could need a miracle, and a Kodesh Baruch Hu will do it for you on demand to some degree, or maybe to a large degree. That's why you read these stories. Not all these stories of big miracles happen just as people need. Wow, that's great. I wish it would happen for me. It does happen for you. We're just not focused. And that's the difference between Yosef and the rest of his brothers. These parshiyot always overlap with Chanukah because basically it's one and the same story. In fact, it's interesting because even though there's a whole Masechta, and we've got a bunch of them here, I see, right, from Megillah alone, right, just a whole Masechta that explains the whole day and the story and the halachas, it's right there before you. Nothing on Chanukah. The Shabbos, there's a little section, about Medlikin, about the halachas of Chanukah, very short, maybe 2 dafim basically. And the Mishnah is nothing but one Mishnah, and even then it's Agav. There's one Mishnah in all of Torah Shabbat Peh that deals with Chanukah. It's one Mishnah. It's amazing, a phenomenal holiday, right? But there's one Mishnah. And what does the Mishnah say? The Mishnah says that if a person, let's say a camel driver, comes into town with flax on the back of his camel, wheat, flax, whatever the case may be, something that's very flammable, right? And he parks, he ties up his camel or donkey, whatever the case may be, that little thing that they, in the Western movies, they tie their horses to, basically. He ties it up to this big wooden thing, right? And he, and the flax, unfortunately, kind of like goes into the window, into the chinvani, into the store of the whoever it is, in the blacksmith or, whoever is selling things, basically. And there's a candle burning, and the flax catches fire, and the whole place burns down. Who's responsible? Who's chayiv? So obviously the camel driver is chayiv. His flax had no business going to his window. It goes into his rishus yachid, that burns everything up. He's chayiv. What about the situation where the camel driver's flax is not going to the window? It's literally just the back of the camel, and it's just overlapping, let's say, the porch of the store, and there's a candle outside, and that catches the flax on fire, and everything burns up, right? Who's responsible? So the answer is that the balabais is chayiv, because he had no business putting a candle up there. Says the Mishnah, unless that was a ner shel Chanukah. Because a ner shel Chanukah, you have to put it outside. Halacha, at least in Eretz Yisrael, is to put it outside. And not only that, by the way, you might argue and say, well, let him put it higher, where the flax can't get to. No, because we know the halacha is to put it within 10 tefachim of the ground, right? Close to the ground, so therefore, the balabayas, the balachanu, was totally within his right to light the menorah there, and even though it's Reshus Rabim and the flax burns up, he's pater. Everyone's pater, because it's not his fault, but he's not chayiv. And that's the extent of the mentioning of Chanukah in the Mishnah. It's a pella, really quite frankly, but that's the way it goes. But a bigger pella, right, even more amazing, is the analogy the Mishnah happens to use. Coincidentally happens to be taught. Why? Because the next week's parsha, the Torah says, Elu toldus Yaakov Yosef. Yosef, right? Hayav ben Shiva Srei Shanim, and it goes on, and never mentions the rest of the brothers, right? You familiar with this? Right? The Kasha the Rashi asked right there on the spot? It's an obvious question. If you're going to mention, here's the son, Yosef, that's one thing, but you mention Elu toldus Yaakov, that's all the Shvatim. So why is there no mention of all the Shvatim? It only mentions Yosef. So therefore, Rashi is compelled to explain, based upon the measures, the following thing. That Yaakov was looking at the Chumash, so to speak. He looked in our parsha, this week's parsha, into chapter 36, right? Numbers right now. And what does he see? All these Alufi Esav, all these chiefs of Esav and these tribes, which includes Amalek and other, and there's tons and tons of Esavians walking the face of the earth at his time, and how much more so in the future, to the point that today it's all over the Esav's all over the world. So Yaakov says, who's going to deal with these guys? These guys, halachahi, Esav's son is Yaakov. Right? Who's going to put these guys in their place and keep them at bay and save us in the end? Says the Torah, right? It will tell us Yaakov, Yosef. Yosef is the one. Yosef is the one that's going to save the Jewish people at some point in the future. And he brings them the pasuk from Avadia, who happened to come from Edom. So anyone who knows Edom is Avadia because he was a ger. In the end, and Avadia says that Yaakov is a fire, Yosef is a flame, and Esav is kash, he's straw, and a fire will go from Yaakov and burn up all the kash, which is Esav, and that's Yosef. Yosef can do that. It's a question. It's nice medrash, right? But Esav was kash. Esav was Rome and its glory. 500 years, conquering the world. Esav becomes Russia. Esav is the Catholic Church going on its crusades and conquering the Jewish people and destroying and killing and murdering and torturing. And it's even America today. Esav is mighty. The economy is slacking off basically, but still it's a powerful nation. Esav is kash, strong. So Rashi brings down a little parable, a little analogy to make his point. He didn't have to go this far, but he does. What does he say? He says, imagine, there's a pikeach. Pikeach is kind of like a wise guy. Smart guy. He's a bright guy. He's a smart guy, right? Clever guy. And he's standing next to a blacksmith when this camel driver shows up. And what does he have on his camel? Of course, pishton. He's got flax, all kinds of flax. Tons of it. And the blacksmith turns to this other guy and says to him, he says, gee, that's a lot of flax, What are we going to do with all of that? Where are we going to put it? He's going to take up all kinds of space in our town and cause all kinds of problems. How can we deal with this flax? So the Pikeach says, no problem. One spark from your anvil, will go out and burn up all the flax. Because it's only flax. It's a lot of flax, a lot of space, but it burns easily. One little tiny spark. All it takes. One tiny spark will go up from your anvil and burn up all the kash. And that's Yosef. Right? That's Yosef, is that tiny spark, that's the mashal, that's the nimshal that Rashi brings down. That's a pikeach. It's a mazik. It's a mazik. It's a pikeach. Oh, here's the problem. Your neighbor's bothering you, right? He's like, got somebody's going, like, just throw a little fire over the fence, basically, burn up his entire property, and your problem's gone. Right? His car makes too much noise in the morning, blow it up the night before. Right? What's the problem? Right? It's, one little bomb, just takes a little bomb this side and blows the whole car up, right? He doesn't talk to you nicely. Here's an idea. It's like, what are you talking about? You're mazik. You can't do things like that. That's the way you solve the problem. An innocent camel driver coming to do business in your town. If it's a Russia, it's one thing. It's not a Russia. Who says it's a Russia? He's coming to do business in your town. That's the way you treat him by bringing up his, because it's got so much of it in there. That's a pikeach. What's the comparison? Why is the halach of Chanukah, the story, the camel driving the pishton, why is it similar to the one by Yosef? Because it's one and the same thing. Why is it one and the same thing? Rashi says in Parshas Vayetze, what does he say? For 14 years, Yaakov has served Lavan, dreaming of going home, but never talks about it. At least not in the Chumash. We can't see him talking in the Chumash, right? So the time comes, and he says, I've got to go. Why? So Rashi explains. The Torah says, once Yosef was born, then Yaakov said, I've got the Satan, the Sitna of Esav, the one who can oppose Esav. He's now born. And because he's born, I can now go back and confront Esav, and all through history. Why Yosef? Why specifically Yosef? Well, there's a whole story behind this, and how it connects to Chanukah, but briefly, why Yosef? Because Yosef was the only son that was born Lamal Merteva. Right? All of his sons were born prematurely, or at least not premature, but those days 7 months wasn't premature, but they're born kind of miraculously because most kids would go 9 months, but Yosef was the only one to be born completely Lamal Merteva. What am I talking about? How was he born miraculously? There's a miracle of birth for everybody, but how was he born miraculously? So Rashi explains, right, that really Leah was pregnant with Yosef. She was about to give birth, not right at the moment, but she was pregnant, and at some point in time, she was going to give birth to Yosef, to a seventh son. What does she do? Instead, she felt bad for Rachel, because she said, if I give birth to a seventh son, and the Shechot already have 2 each, then that leaves only one possible, because they knew that 12 through Rachel Kodesh, 12 would be born. Only one son could be born to Rachel. That's not nice. That's not fair. Especially since she saved my life in the whole process, right? So let me not have a son. She's mispalel that Yosef should not be a boy but a girl instead. Well, not him, but that what if she was pregnant with a girl? The fetus changed from a boy to a girl, and Dinah was born instead. Dinah was born instead. Even I have a theory. If you look at this week's parsha, it mentions that the whole episode was Shechem. That it says every time it says Naira, she went out because she was violated, right? It says Naira, the word Naira is written. Right? It doesn't say Naira. Also by Parsha Kiseitse, talking about the same Indian about a woman being violated back there as well. Also, it's the only word you find where the Torah is makpid, not to write the word properly every time. Usually it's one time, maybe it's an aleph, a hey, something like that. But here, every time, Na'ara, a young girl, is written Na'ar, a young boy. And Rashi explains the reason why this happens is because she's a Yetzanis. She goes out. Because her mother was a Yetzanis, so she's a Yetzanis too. Obviously, Rashi's Rashi Pshat Pshat, but you could also learn that maybe perhaps the reason why she's a Yetzanis is not because of Leah per se, because Leah did it because that's what the situation, and Yisachar was born to her. So that means a schar. So as bad as she was, a great thing happened. So where did Leah get this? So what does it say by Yosef? It says that Yosef went out. Right? Yosef Yatzah on Mitzrayim, he was a Yatzah. Right? Meaning he was one who went out into the world. So even though that Yosef became Dinah inside Leah, nevertheless, some aspect of Yosef remained behind in Dinah, and that's why they're very much connected, to such an extent that Dinah and Shechem give birth to a daughter, who's Asnas, who gets adopted by Potiphar, and becomes the wife of Yosef in the end. It's like incredibly connected, the whole thing. It goes all over the place. It's been hours just showing all the connections. It's remarkable. It's mamash incredible. It's just incredible how interconnected the whole story is, especially with Chanukah as well this time of year. Just to see it, you got to spend time. We don't spend time with Parsha Shvuah nearly enough. So much going on over there. But that's what happens, right? So the Gemara in Brochas says, on Samach Amud Aleph, it says a person can be mispalo for the gender of a child, if they're expecting, up until 40 days. Because at 40 days, that's when Shemaim decide if it's going to be a male soul or a female soul. And if you happen to have a female soul, you're done for a male soul, or if you have a male soul, you're done for a female soul, so now you're being samach on a nes.
40 days for what?
From conception. From conception. The first 40 days. The first 40 days, it could be anything. It's like a cleave. At 40 days, that's when the soul goes in, and you can't be mispelled because now you might be samach on a nes. You might be asking for a nes. It's not a good thing to do, necessarily. Okay? What about Leah? The Gemara says, must be she davened before 40 days. Or it must be she davened after 40 days. Because if she davened before 40 days, then she wasn't pregnant with Yosef. Because at 40 days, that's when the soul goes in. So you can say this by the Shvatim, it happened earlier, because you see Yaakov and Esau fighting in the womb, but that's later on. But the Maisa, Mistam is after the 40 days, because you know what? You can't daven for a nes for yourself necessarily, or at least you can't rely upon one, but you can rely upon one for somebody else, which we do all the time. We do it all the time. We daven for people who are sick, because that's, for someone else, you're not being sloppy, you're not being lazy, not coming off your cheshbon. You're davening for nes for someone, that's perfectly okay. But for yourself, it's different. So Mistama, that Leah was misfollowed for Yosef after the 48 days, because that's how she knew it was Yosef, and therefore a nes happened for the birth of Yosef, but not for the rest of the Shvatim. So that's what Yaakov knew. He said, well, this guy, he's born miraculously. He'll be miraculous from beginning until end. His entire life will be miraculous. In fact, the Arizal says, in the Prius Chaim, he says the following by Yeshua ben Nun. He asked the question, why does Yeshua ben Nun die at the age of 110? Because that's the gematria of nes. And because Baruch Hu wanted to be clear to everybody else that the Yeshua ben Nun's life, who came from Yosef anyhow, right, through Ephraim, Yeshua ben Nun's life was lamalam netefra from beginning until the end. From the beginning until the end. So what about Yosef? So the Gemara in Baruch says he died because of Rabbanis. You got to become a Rav of the shul, become a Rav of the community. And Moshe Rabbeinu was okay though. I mean, he didn't give more than that. The Torah is makbid to say he did not lose any of his strength, and he had Rabbanis. He had the most intense Rabbanis anybody's ever had. And he survived. But Yosef's not going to survive? Okay, shot level, but on a different level, because Yosef's life was an ace. And that's why if you look in the Chumash, everything he touches turns to gold, as Rashi points out. He's got the golden touch to such a degree that Potiphar and Paro, who are holding a Memtesh Shari Tuma, which means basically worse than the people on Dizengoff Street. They're way worse than that. And they can see God through what he does, because Yosef's life is Lamal Matava. And that's what Yaakov says. Esav is not kash to somebody who does not believe in miracles. To somebody who believes in the physical world as being concrete and so, to Kosh Baruch Hu, Esav is kash. To him, because Kosh Baruch Hu does everything Lamal Matava. Nothing is too strong for him. Nothing can get this way. Only somebody who buys into that perspective and looks at life that way, for him, Esav will be kash. That's what Yaakov is saying. The rest of us have a tough time. Look, Yaakov says, he says, I'm looking at all these alufi Esav, and I'm worried, I'm concerned. Who's going to overcome them? Ela todas Yaakov Yosef. Why? Because for Yosef it doesn't make a difference. They stand for Esau. The guy's 6 years old. His mother's like right there, and he walks in front of between Rochel and Esau, and he stands there, pulls himself up, and gets a bracha before later on because he's not afraid. He doesn't see a strong Gibor over here who can do damage. He sees an Esau who's kash. And that's what Yaakov understood about Yosef. And that's why there's a comparison. And that's why he's a Pikeach. He's not a Mazik. Because the Pikeach is not saying, go light this guy's flax on fire. The Pikeach is saying, you got to look past what you see. It looks big, it looks powerful, but you understand, it's big and powerful. It's a mashal for life. This stuff is nothing. The big and powerful stuff in the world can be gone in 2 seconds. And I'll tell you, this idea did not become clear to me. I mean, I didn't have a real life mashal for this, except miracles happen here and there, until I saw one particular photo. And literally, this whole story and measures came back to me. And the picture was the World Trade Center after it was completely destroyed. It was unbelievable. Do you remember that picture? Cover of Time magazine? Just a few pieces of metal sticking out of the ground, basically. With 104 floors like that? 110 floors? 110, right? Hmm?
That's the FRC building. That's the FRC building. The World Trade Center is much taller.
Okay, but I'm talking about the World Trade Center right now.
Yeah.
The picture in Time magazine was of the World Trade Center.
When it was destroyed, it was 110?
After it was destroyed.
After it was destroyed. It was completely destroyed. The Empire State Building wasn't destroyed. It got hit by an airplane.
I know. The Empire State Building is 110.
Oh, okay, but I know it's over 100. It's over 100
so
floors. I don't remember exactly, whatever it was. But the point is that you know how much metal, concrete, and steel was involved in building this building. My background is architecture. I was actually at University for Architecture at one point in time, and when I was there, our class went on a trip to New York to look at all the architecture, because that's where a lot of the architects had a chance to do their stuff, do their thing. And one of the trips we went on was to the World Trade Center, and we're taken on a tour of the building by a tour guide who knew all the facts, and he was, or she, whatever, was explaining to us all that went into the building of this building and how unique the core structure was. And basically, and here's the words: it cannot be brought down by an airplane, it cannot be brought down by winds, by earthquakes, nothing. This thing is solid. The core, and not just that, if a fire breaks out in one floor, the way it's been built, it can be contained in that one floor and not affect the other floors. It was like, basically, it was New York's version of the Titanic, basically. Okay, that's what it was. The Titanic, there was a big picture across the Titanic where they stood at you ever see this picture? I mean, yeah. I never understood where the Titanic went down to one day. I came up with a book like Titanic about 10 years ago, like that, movies like that. I was going to a bookstore, and I saw the whole pile of books, Titanic. So I took out the book, basically, and the first thing I do is go to pictures, right? Just go to pictures, right? And there's a picture. I never saw this picture before in my entire life. It was remarkable. People standing on the deck of the boat before it's going to leave. I mean, who does a thing like this? And a big banner that says, a boat that even God can't sink. Wow. And you're going to sail on that boat now? It's like, you're not a believer. You're an atheist. Why start up a boat that an iceberg can't sink? Okay, I can handle that one. A boat that the winds can't blow? Fine, but God can't sink? Poof. Like Kash goes down. And this person's saying, there's no way. And I'm standing here looking at this picture, and I can't imagine how all that concrete and that steel and that glass and everything and all the equipment and the desks, the tables, the chairs, and, unfortunately people too, it's like incredible. Where did it go to? The whole thing burned in 103 minutes. It came down from the time the first plane went in. There was a skyscraper in Spain. Sorry to go a little late, but a skyscraper in Spain that burned for 24 hours. And only a few floors went up. The building's still there. They fixed it up and went back in the building again. No concrete, steel, glass building has ever come down in the history of architecture because of a fire. Or anything for that matter. An earthquake, maybe perhaps nothing more than that. It's simply not a building that's built like this. And not that fast.
Explosives?
The World Trade Center.
No, explosives. I'm saying, have they seen explosives do such a...
Oh, well, that's a different story. Let's not go there right now, okay? But for chot, it should have pancaked. You know what I mean? Pancake? One floor comes... No, it didn't. Only for the... You ever see the picture? Yeah. Straight down. One floor, you stop. Two floor, maybe, and it stops. stops.
Is that what the theories are
It
based
stops.
What's the theory?
It stops. At some point in time, it stops. It doesn't go all the way to the ground. Not that fast.
on? Is that what the theories are based on?
That's why they came out. That's why people came up, because it's just physically not possible. But you know something? How it happened and why it happened.
What theory?
Well, conspiracy theories. But why it happened, no.
Well,
It doesn't make a
think
difference.
about it
For this discussion, it doesn't make a difference, because you know something? Everything is hashgacha pratis. That's the big picture. For the Jewish people, God did it. It happened. That's the bottom line. And it happened in the way it looked like cash. And I thought to myself, wow, this is an example of I would never be able to imagine this to happen, but it happened like cash. The physical world is real, and it's strong and it's solid. But if you get to a Hanukkah point of view, and this is a 2-part series, by the way, I think I was told. We have next week too, unless you throw me out. Right? But this, the Hanukkah perspective is supposed to change our life. And you have to change it. You have to accept it and go with it. Because you know why? The way the world is going, we're about to watch the Jewish people once again rise to a level completely lamalam etava. We already are anyhow, by the way. We already are holding there. We take it for granted. The less we take it for granted, the less HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to do a miracle that shocks into realizing that every day He's doing miracles for us. Take the time. This is the time of you to do it. Take the time. Look at the miracles of life that are happening for you and people around you. It sounds a little bit trivial. It's not. It's not. Because it's a key. You want more miracles to happen. If you want HaKadosh Baruch Hu to play a bigger role in your life and make good and big things happen, appreciate the smaller ones first. That's what Chanukah says. So Hashem next week, we'll see how to do that.